how were you making money initially? So you were one of the first who actually gave meaning to the term blogging.
At that point, I was like, what's a blog? Before anyone knew that Ranbir and Katrina were dating, a friend of mine happened to be on the same Lufthansa flight. He was like, oh, I saw Katrina with her boyfriend. I was like, what? I remember dropping my fork and knife.
I've also heard your story with Shah Rukh Khan, that when you went to meet him for the first time, you had to wait for hours and hours.
It was supposed to be 7:30 in the evening. Our turn came at 4:30 in the morning. Somebody had sent me pictures of Rajnikant without his hair and makeup. So I put up these pictures, and the next day, the comments in my blog were filled with people not trolling me but were deeply upset and offended. How is this any different than body shaming? Suddenly the lights go off because Salman Khan has entered. And I remember taking a picture of him and putting it up on the blog that same night, like, look who we saw. And that day he had asked everyone, return everyone's credit cards. I'm going to pay for everyone in the club. And the next day, the midday, ironically, we picked up this story from my blog. I always tell everyone, whoever's worked at Miss Malini can pretty much work anywhere.
Our guest for today is somebody who knows everything about what's happening in Bollywood. She owns India's biggest entertainment platform, Miss Malini. Welcome, Malini, to our show, Wiping Out the Norm.
Thank you so much for having me.
But starting things off, your company got acquired by the Good Glam Group. I mean, you've fully changed the way bloggers are now looked at, and you were one of the first who actually gave meaning to the term blogging. So tell me, like, how did this journey even start? आपको ये introduction हुआ कैसे ये blogging के world में?
So actually, I started off as a backup dancer for Sukhbir many years ago. And when I moved to Bombay, I was working in a .com. And dhire dhire karte karte, I was a little bit into the whole digital world for a bit. And then I became a radio DJ for 9 years in Bombay. And the radio station was Radio 1. Formerly 94.3 and 92.5, and it was owned by the newspaper Midday. So they gave me a column in Midday called Malini's Mumbai, which is like a gossip column. And
how did that happen?
Because the radio station was owned by the newspaper. So they said, since you, any case, cover nightlife and you go out, you talk about it on the show, why don't you also start a column in the paper alongside?
So was your show doing really great, for which they gave you
I think it was, we were the first few radio stations and we were the only English playing radio station. So I used to do a show called Horn OK Please from 6 to 9 p.m. And I used to cover a lot of, what's happening in the city and stuff. And I guess a lot of celebrity, star-studded events. So then they started inviting me to a lot of these things. And they said, why don't you write a column about it? And that was the first iteration, maybe 17, 18 years ago.
And
column
how would
called
you
Malini's Mumbai.
Get these pieces of content to talk about? Ki kya ho raha hai city mein, kya chal raha hai?
So it was because I would be invited to the events, right? As the radio jockey. So as a result, I would go and then I would just write about whatever I experienced.
So from there on, your journey in events started?
So that's where my journey in, going to these events started, definitely. And then I think back in 2008, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was complaining that, whenever I write my column, they cut it down so much and they edit it down to only keeping who are the, which celebrity came with who and more of that. So he said, why don't you start a blog? And at that point, I was like, what's a blog? And he said, it's like this online digital diary. And I said, but who reads it? And he said, don't worry about that. He just made me a login. And I logged in and I started writing.
On which platform?
It was actually wordpress.missmalini.com.
Oh.
Which was really... it was really funny to look back at that because it all happened quite by accident.
But you said that you were in background dancing. So what was that about? Tell us a little more on that. Like, which actors did you perform with and how did you get into that in the first place?
So it wasn't for film. It was a lot of indie pop singers and stars. So when I was in college, my choreographer in the college used to run her own dance troupe. Her name was Radhika Jacob. So her troupe was called Radhika Jacob and the Planets. And so she used to a lot of times find good dancers in colleges and ask them if they want to join the troupe. So she asked me and another friend of mine from the college. So I used to be a backup dancer for singers like Sukhbir, Anamika, Penaz Misani, Shibani Kashyap, a lot of them. And then we also used to get to perform at things like the Pepsi Dance Connection or the Channel V Awards. So that, that year we even danced with the Spice Girls and Peter Andre, Mika Singh, Daler Mehndi. So all these indie pop singers. So not film background, but on
Singing.
stage. On stage.
Okay.
Dancing, yeah.
And where did you grow up?
So my dad was in the foreign service. So I was born in Allahabad, but 0 to 17, I grew up all over the world. So every 3 years we used to move. So Somalia, Lebanon, Greece, Germany, Bulgaria, Ivory Coast. And then when I was 17, I came back because he retired. Then I was in Delhi for 6 years and now Bombay for 24.
What is so special about Bombay that, after roaming around
I feel
all
like
the world
people,
you're here?
yeah, it's one of those places that you love it or hate it. I came for a weekend just for fun, and I pretty much never left. So that's the story of Bombay. It's that city of dreams, I guess.
It is, it is.
Yeah,
And that's how you started your dream, in this city of dreams. How was your business valued? Because every blogger today wants to grow a business out of it now that
sure.
it's like a cool thing to do. How does a blogger even start their business firstly? How do they convert their hobby and passion into a business? And how do they value it? Like, what do
Sure.
investors look at when investing in a blogging business?
So I mean, it was pretty unique because we're a personality-led brand.
Hmm.
But if you look at bloggers in general, you have to look at obviously what your revenue model is, right? Different people have different revenue models. For us, there was a lot of advertorial, a lot of advertising, a lot of content that we created for different brands. So that was our model. And then the valuation was made as per you have a certain exponential of the revenue. So based on the revenue you make, there's a certain multiple they calculate.
Got it. But I don't think so. It must be more than 5x because in proper tech related services where you have consumers
Yeah.
subscribing to your tech, I think it's more than 8x, 7x.
I think I mean, it really depends. It also depends on the different pieces to the business. There's a lot of pieces on our side which are, hard to put a number on, right? Whether it's a celebrity network or relationships. So I think there's different things that come into play.
So you had 5 other business verticals which got acquired by the Good Glam Group,
Yeah.
but you started initially with Miss Malini. Tell me about your journey on how you started the other platforms of influencer marketing, video production, and creative agency also, which
Yeah.
are some of the other businesses you own.
So I think it all was very complementary within the ecosystem, right? So it made sense once we were blogging that it made sense to have our own in-house video unit, and then we realized that hey, we're really good at video production, so we can also produce television shows, not just for ourselves but for other people. Similarly, we realized that since we were, my team was managing me for so long, we could understand talent management. So we're like, okay, let's start Ignite. And then it was called Good Talent Network when we were acquired. And similarly, all these different pieces to it. We also started something called Girl Tribe, which is, a big ecosystem for women. We built an app around that for a while as well. So I think it was just that all of these businesses were very complementary within our ecosystem. So when it was acquired, it made sense. And that's where the value became much higher for the entire Miss Malini entertainment business, because it wasn't just the blog, it was much more.
But when did you start your second enterprise after the first one?
I'm
After
going to
how
have
many
to
years?
go and look back at the timelines because I think 2008 the blog just started. The first seed funding was 2010. Then
And
we had
where did you
another
get
round.
the funding from?
So it was an angel round. So it was like, friends and family acquaintances, all of that. But we had the head of, Google India. We had some people from Zenga. We had different people, some people from international, investors as well. And then after that, we raised some money from Orion and NEA.
Oh.
We
And why did
also-
you raise the money? What was
Honestly,
it
just for growth, right? I mean, we were always very frugal about how we spent our money and what we did with it. But it was important to be able to scale up, that you need to have some investment, or just sort of to invest in infrastructure and manpower, expand out the different verticals. And then Ananya Birla also was an investor with us. And then the good news is it's always, it's much harder to pay people back than raise money. So I'm very
Yeah.
glad we were able to pay people back multiple X and then have some equity in a company that will hopefully IPO.
Yeah, of course. It's already in news that the Good Glam Group will IPO soon, and that's why your cash and stock deal with Miss Malini will really help you too.
Yes.
But for the benefit of our audience, you said you had so
Yeah.
many investors within just 2 years of starting. So what did you have on your platform? जिसको देख के investors were like, okay, this seems like a nice growth potential. And of course, ad revenues you said is one of them. But what were the other modes
So,
of
I
revenue?
mean, first of all, it wasn't just immediate. It took it took
Yeah.
its time to convince people, because people, do struggle with the idea of investing in content businesses. And the biggest struggle I had was this key man insurance, that what if you get hit by a bus, Malini, then what happens to the business?
Correct.
So that was a challenge always. But I think for us, it was that we were a unique voice in the industry. We're also a positive media company, and most media is actually owned by much larger media houses, right? So we were kind of a standalone operation that was doing great content. And, I think it's a mix of having the right leadership. I believe investors invest in people, not in businesses. So
Yeah.
I think I'm very lucky that my co-founders, one is Mike Melly, one is Naushad Rizwanullah, is also my husband. are very solid, and like Naushad's background is Yale and Harvard, so he's a real business mind. Mike is also Babson and has been running operations, and they're both still here with me 15 years later. And very few, senior management have that luxury of staying with the same management or the same partners or co-founders for so long.
Yeah.
So I think that trust factor also plays a big part.
That's true. But, of course, team is a given.
Yeah.
But how were you making money initially?
So initially, the first couple of years, there was no money. It was all barter.
Okay.
When we started out, it was, somebody would give you a pair of jeans to write a blog, or someone would give you a product. This is, I'm talking about literally 13, 14 years ago. Over time, it's become an industry, and you have to credit Mike Melly, one of my co-founders, with really opening doors and explaining to people the value of influencer marketing. There was no such terminology. Content creator, influencer marketing, none of this was there. And everyone tried to understand, what is my ROI if I invest with an influencer? But I think slowly people began to realize that there are different stages of marketing, right? You can put up a billboard for awareness. You can get a celebrity to endorse it as an ambassador, again, for people to have eyeballs. Then you can say that, okay, an influencer is someone that somebody trusts and tries a product and so recommends it and so has more impact. And then we realize the next thing is also micro and nano creators that actually have a smaller community but a much more impactful one.
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to take your friend's recommendation on what air conditioner to buy as opposed to an influencer or a celebrity or a billboard. So there have been many stages to this growth.
Understood. And which was your first source of revenue? How did you earn money for the first time through your blog?
I honestly, Mike will remember better than I will, but I remember the first barter deal was a pair of Levi's jeans. And I remember they flew me to Delhi to come and write a blog about it. And this is when it was just a blog. There was no social media per se. And I remember it was Jacqueline Fernandez, Ileana de Cruz, me and Chitrangada, and I had to come and interview all of them and write up a post. And years later, when I was interviewing her, I showed her this, and we had a good laugh about how many years it's been.
Wow. And which was your first monetary deal? This was a barter deal.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I feel like it must have been one of the beauty brands. It might have been a Maybelline or L'Oreal. I mean, Mike will know better than I will.
How did you get introduced to Mike, who got your business to the level it is today with you?
So honestly, actually, it's the same guy who had told me, why don't you start a blog, Karan Wadera. He's the guy who's responsible for that Sing is King and Snoop Dogg collaboration. He used to handle Pen Masala. Now he manages Snoop Dogg's Cannabis Fund as well. And he's just a great guy. He's like one of my husband's best friends. And he's the one who had sort of recommended starting the blog. And he knew Mike Melly. So when Mike had come to Bombay, he had introduced us and we got along, and they had once sat with me at Blue Frog and pitched me this idea of, how can we start a business with you and as a creator, and that was kind of the beginning. So Karan Wadera has played a very instrumental role in my life.
Wow. But how did they see this potential in you at that time? What were you doing?
I think that, internationally, blogging and the web space was already pretty established.
Yeah.
So if you look at brands like Pop Sugar, Just Jared, they were already there. Perez Hilton. We're just 5 or 6 years behind that always. So if you see now, podcasting is slowly picking up here when it was already big business in the US. So that's what they always told me, and that's why I came up with Miss Malini, because I like the alliteration, because there were already things like Pop Sugar or Perez Hilton, and that's what I modeled it on first as an individual personality, and then slowly built it out as a actual digital magazine.
But who can be your next in line?
As in?
Like, to continue your legacy.
The legacy. So,
who
that's
can
why
be the
I've
next?
separated the Miss Malini brand from Malini Agarwal. So that little anime that you see on the site is the brand.
Yeah.
And already now, I'm not the only one who writes for it. In fact, there's a team of bloggers, and that's been the case for many years. So I think it's more of when you want to leave a brand, it has to have longevity and it has to outlive you.
Yeah.
So that was always the plan.
Yeah, and you spoke about investors having this key man risk in your business. How did you explain them this?
I didn't know how to explain it either, because it was kind of new to have a personality-led brand. Now it's pretty common, and now influencers are big business. So, I think for them, they slowly over time understood that it's not just about me as an individual. It's like anybody who's sort of captaining a ship. For instance, would Apple be Apple without Steve Jobs, even if it's not called Steve Jobs, the company? So I think slowly people, realize the value of it, that any company needs good leadership, needs good management. But I think their fear was just the idea that it's named after me, as opposed to named a Vogue or a another brand name.
Yeah.
So, but I guess we were smart to stick to our guns because here we are today.
Yeah, I mean, like Prada, Armani, everything is, Chanel, everything
Yeah.
has been named over an individual.
Yeah.
And even after like Coco Chanel's death, it still
Yeah,
is existing.
yeah, exactly.
So it was long due that investors realize
That,
what's
yeah.
the value
Yeah.
of having your
I
name.
think those are also because they make a tangible physical product. I think in this case, because the product is entertainment or content, that's where maybe the gray area is for investors.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've grown your team enough now.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
there is this Bollywood dialogue, no? Kitne aadmi the? So, like, how many people were there in your team when you got acquired?
At acquisition, I think we were about, I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but somewhere between 60 and 80
Okay.
as a team, yeah.
It's not like too big like an MNC, but a lean team with which you operated 5
Yeah,
businesses.
we were
that's so
always
good.
careful not to have too many people because that's that many more people to manage. And we've always, we always tell everyone whoever's worked at Miss Malini can pretty much work anywhere. And you see, that there's
Really?
proof in the pudding. I mean, there's people who ex Miss Malini, like Rashmi Daryanani, is now at a very senior position at Snapchat. There are people who moved on to Amazon and IMDb. So they've all, once that's on the resume, I can tell you that helps significantly.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, what makes you say that so confidently? Like,
Because I've seen it. I've seen so many people who've worked with us over so many years do so well. And I know that they came in completely raw. Like Rashmi Daryanani, I had hired off Twitter. And she was, just about right out of college. And she spent 8 years at the company. And now she's doing so well. So, I mean, a lot of people in these cases I've seen. And, some of them have gone on to become talent themselves, actors themselves.
Who's become an actor?
So Priyam Saha, she's a comedian, actor. In fact, there's a new OTT show coming out that she's in as well.
Oh.
So we've been really happy to see a range of people. And when we were hiring, there weren't people traditionally, trained in this to write for entertainment online. So then I actually went hunting for the people I hired. I found them on Twitter. I found them on Facebook, as opposed to where you traditionally find your
Yeah.
talent.
I mean, I don't think so. LinkedIn was there, no, back then?
I don't think so, no. I think Facebook also. I mean, this is all predates all social media. In a sense.
Yeah, it was like long back.
Yeah.
So your blog was on WordPress and not on any other internet platform first?
It was just on WordPress to start with, and then I used to tinker around with it a lot, and then eventually we hosted it on our own servers. But for the first 2 years, yeah, it was a completely WordPress driven.
But how did you
website.
promote it for those 2 years?
I didn't really. Honestly, the world was different then, and I've actually written my second book under the influence
Yeah.
on this topic, is that there was no concept of gathering likes and followers because there was no platform that said, okay, this is how many people. Like, I knew in the back end how many people have read the blog. And I remember a funny story, I think maybe in 2010 or 11, I threw a party at Hard Rock Cafe to celebrate 1,000 Facebook fans.
Huh.
Because in my mind at that point, it felt like, wow, 1,000 is such a large number
Yeah.
of people. You can't fit 1,000 people in a room. So, there have been many landmarks like that. So I think that was a different time where I used to write for my enjoyment and satisfaction, and it was never meant to be my career or make my money. I had a full-time job running the digital content. I was the digital content head for Channel V. So it was never about that. Only now it's become about a public display of likes, numbers, and then that translates into revenue. But when it started, that was never how people looked at it.
But you said that you had Facebook fans, which means
Yeah.
your platform was on Facebook.
As in,
too.
yeah, as in like an extension to the blog. So the
Yeah.
blog, all the blogs would go up on Miss Malini, and then Facebook would be, the extension where I would share links to the blog. So the promoting of it would be maybe like that, like soft promoting through Twitter or Facebook or whatever social media platform
Right.
there happened to be.
And how are people discovering your blog? I'm asking this question for the new bloggers today
Yeah.
who want to start on other platforms,
Sure.
unlike Instagram or Facebook.
I think now it's much more saturated. For me, I think it was a mix of the fact that there were really very few people writing about, what I was writing about in entertainment from an influencer perspective before that existed. So I would pop up in people's radar, like even internationally. I remember the One Drop Foundation was researching bloggers in India to wake up and cover their something they were doing with the One Drop Foundation. And they sent me my first little video flip camera saying that we'll send you a video camera if you cover this on your blog. And I was like, that's great. I can't believe we're going to do that. So I think it was just that there was a lot less of anybody doing it. I would say the strategy now is probably different. But at that time, it was more that a lot of people also used to hear me on the radio, so maybe that's why they heard about the blog. But it was word of mouth, or people would, slowly had started entering this digital era and started discovering the blog because maybe one person shared a link about a story. And there were a couple of, I think, key moments. I still remember one random Tuesday night, me and some friends had gone to China House, which was a new club that had opened in Bombay. And at 3 o'clock, the lights came on and everyone was going to leave. And then suddenly the lights go off again because Salman Khan has entered. And I remember then everything was not on our smartphone. So I remember having a separate camera, a separate phone. And I remember taking a picture of him and putting it up on the blog that same night, like, look who we saw. And that day he had asked everyone, return everyone's credit cards. I'm going to pay for everyone in the club, and started handing out bottles of champagne. So I documented this. And the next day, the midday, ironically, picked up this story from my blog. And so that's where suddenly people were like, oh, wow. And the thing is with the digital world is it's instantaneous. So I could go see something and put it up in the next hour. Now you can do it instantly.
Yeah.
But with the newspaper, you have to wait till the next day because the paper closes at 6 or 8 or whatever time the press closes. So I think that was kind of the advantage. And there was a couple of different things like this that happened that ended up becoming up sort of breaking news stories that nobody else had. And then some of them are very coincidental. I remember before anyone knew that Ranbir and Katrina were dating, a friend of mine happened to be on the same Lufthansa flight with them in the same row. And when he landed, I was having dinner with him at Blue Frog, and he was like, oh, I saw Katrina with her boyfriend. I was like, what? I remember dropping my fork and knife. And I said, who was it? And he goes, I wasn't sure. Then I Googled, and it was this guy. And so I wrote that story describing how someone had seen them on the plane. And it was very cute that they were reading scripts and cuddling, and no one knew for sure if they're dating. And then this kind of broke the story. But we've always been very mindful of, we're not trying to get up into anyone's business. It's all very happy and shiny and sort of, like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, but nothing that goes overboard, which is why even when, things have gotten a little invasive, like when things went off the rails with all the drama between Kangana and Hrithik, we drew the line and we said we're not going to write any more speculation, only if they want to release a statement. And early on, I made a rule for my team because they would always ask, can I write this piece of gossip? Can I not? And, I came about this the hard way. I remember running into celebrities and feeling bad because we had written something about them. And I felt awkward
that
coming
too when
face
the blog
to face.
is in your name.
In my name. So I went back and made a rule for my team that you cannot write anything you can't say to somebody's face. Which is a very unusual rule for Bollywood sites.
Yeah.
But it's held us in good stead, and I was happy to see that there is an audience for positive content as well.
But on this part of you covering somebody whom you saw in their private space, like Ranbir and Katrina, don't they come back and tell you to take it down?
So the thing is, I didn't post any pictures of them. It was just kind of like they were spotted, so they were
Acha.
seen. So I think that's, a gray area. And because they're in a public place, so if you see a celebrity, you can. But I think that when you start, there are very gray areas in terms of where people then start invading or taking pictures. Like there have been pictures taken of Alia from her, neighbor's house or whatever. And so I think that you have to have a moral compass, which I think that, there's a lot of glossing over of that in this industry, especially that sab chalta hai or they're celebrities, so they asked for it or they're all fair game. But I think that you still have to treat everyone like humans at some level.
But do you think that if you had a picture of them on the flight, if your friend had given it to you, would you have posted it?
At that time, probably yes. Today, probably not.
Yeah, you learn with time.
You learn with time, and you also learn with experience. And I mean, I told you, like, it's not like I knew these things off the bat. I mean, I've documented this in my first book as well. One of the first things that I learned a lesson from was somebody had sent me pictures of Rajnikant without his hair and makeup on.
Okay.
And now normally, if you look at internationally or even India, people love to see celebrities non-makeup looks just to see how they look in real life. And so you don't think twice. So I'd put up these pictures, and the next day, the comments in my blog, not even social media because it wasn't, were filled with people not trolling me, but were deeply upset and offended that I had shamed their hero. And I really thought about it, and I was like, so yeah, that's true. How is this any different than body shaming or skin color shaming? And so I took it down, I wrote an apology. And I said, you're right, I see what I did wrong.
Yeah.
And so these are the lessons I've learned along the way as well.
Yeah, which you've now documented in your
I've documented in both the books. So all of this is also in the first book. In the second book, I've also documented how social media gave me my whole life, but also took its pound of flesh. So as kind of like I feel that the biggest mistake that all of us are suffering is that nobody taught us how to behave online.
Yeah.
No one taught us how to use social media. In real life, uh, you know, you learn how to drive a car, you get lessons. Even in your biology class, you're taught how to, dissect the frog. If I just gave you a scalpel and a frog or my car keys without any instruction, you never know what a nightmare that would be. So I think that we are lacking some instruction in that because we didn't realize how big a part of our reality, virtual reality, or the internet was going to become. It was always kind of like it's a playground or it's not, it's make believe.
Yeah.
But it's very IRL, in fact, if you
But
think about
on
it.
this, what's your take on the deepfake videos that have been coming now?
I mean, I think that was always going to be something that we had to be wary of, which is why it's so important. I think, a great example of this is, all the publicity stunts that we see, or even, whatever we've seen happen in the past couple of months with different celebrities, is that how much can you believe anymore, and what is the truth, and what is the, onus on whom to find out the truth. And that's the important thing. And I think that a lot, and that's what I'm kind of trying to still grapple with is, in this world of instant information, who's really taking time to verify things or check things. I mean, that's where you have to give Faye D'Souza props for Beetroot, because she will only put up anything that is well researched or she has verified resources, because she comes from a background of news reporting that has that in their blood. I'm not sure that's true for the rest of social media, and that's where all the chaos and the panic gets created, right?
Yeah, but why only few celebrities are targeted in this? Like,
I don't
only
know if I think
Rashmika Mandana was.
I feel like unfortunately celebrities get targeted more than anybody else, because just by virtue of being celebrities. The same thing, right? There might be nepotism in every field in the world, but the one that we talk about the most is entertainment, right?
Because it's seen publicly.
It's seen publicly, but even big industrialists, there's a lot of nepotism per se, but nobody talks about it that way. So I think that because people worship celebrities so much, they're also very quick to tear them down. You know what I mean? So I think that that's the double-edged sword. I don't think it's fair that specific celebrities are constantly targeted. I don't think it's surprising either. I think it's just a nature of, and I've unpacked in my book also that, we're not all born trolls. There's something that factors that in. And the two biggest factors, according to a study that they did, is mood and time of day. So trolling is a much more after dark activity.
Yeah.
And it's also based on your mood. So mood and environment have a much larger impact on how you'll behave. And I'll give you a small example of my own.
Yeah.
So, harmless as it may sound, for the longest time, I thought LOL stood for lots of love. Now, it's a harmless enough mistake. But if you're writing a condolence message to someone whose dead relative has passed away, and instead of saying, so sorry for your loss, lots of love, you've said, so sorry for your loss, a laugh out loud. How horrible is that, right? But, enough time has passed, and I always say that, comedy is just tragedy plus time. But these are the things that we don't realize. We all think of ourselves as good people. But if I were to ask you, some of the things that you've said online yourself, or some things you've commented, would you ever say that to the person sitting in front of you? Would you say 100% that no? There's probably been something you got away with because you didn't have to acknowledge their existence or look them dead in the eye, even though they know who you are, even though they can identify you. Because there is this, and it's not just a digital thing. If you think about it, I had based my initial blog on that Stardust character, Madam M, who used to wield this long black cigarette holder with a black cat and write Bollywood under ki gossip. And she never thought twice, because she was an anonymous personality, never thought twice about what she's saying about whom. But now, the thing is, when you don't think of people as human and you think of them as a character or just a celebrity or an actor or a number on the screen, you don't think of them as human. But as soon as you think of someone as human, you start to expect a little humanity.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And I actually encourage people to do that. I say that for all the people that worry about, oh, I only got 5 likes on this picture, do you even know who those 5 are? Or if you want that 500,000, what are you collecting? And I've also unpacked this in my second book that, we're so busy trying to collect this currency of numbers and we don't even know who we've picked up on the way. There's actually a theory called the Dunbar principle that the
What is
founder
that?
of Quorum Club told me about. And it was fascinating because I was struggling to finish my book. And then he told me about the Dunbar theory. The Dunbar theory states that cognitively, human beings are capable of only having 150 meaningful relationships at any point in their life. Now, this includes everyone that you know. Now, you have 5 close friends. I'm sure you've heard this in the past. 5 close friends, an outer circle of 15 closer friends, 50 friends, 150 acquaintances, and 1,500 faces you can remember at any given point. Now, different people at different times will shift within these brackets, which is why sometimes you'll run across someone and you just won't remember their face, even though you may have known them from before. And I think this is the problem with social media. And this Dunbar theory has come after much study and understanding what is the size of groups and where does community and society fall apart. And most weddings, the core is 150 people.
Yeah.
If you look at that number, most Facebook groups or communities and even cults are 150
Right.
people. So what's fascinating about this is that, and if you've seen a movie called Social Dilemma on Netflix, as the human race, we were never equipped to be judged by so many people so frequently and so fast as we are today. So when I started writing my blog, I wrote a piece of content and I would show 3-4 people and they would probably nicely, even if they didn't like it, say it in a way with some humanity. And I would be my own judge. Now the problem is, even if I don't care how many likes or followers I have to worry as a creator, what will you think about how many likes and followers I have? So I've even unpacked in the book that I wish I had so many followers and likes that I could tell you that they don't matter. But unfortunately, for the world, people always feel that only people who don't have something say it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's true. It's a very important psychological point.
It is, and I think that's what everyone is really struggling with today. And that's why I always encourage people to sort of step back
Yeah.
and think about, in this race for numbers, what have you actually collected? Who have you collected?
But don't you think numbers matter if you have to monetize?
Of course they do, but I think that there's also been a shift in branding and brands understanding as the evolution has happened. Because you might have someone with 30 million followers, but the brand that's trying to sell them a Mercedes, probably not even 3 of them is the target audience for
Correct.
that product. So there is an influence of every kind of product. The larger the following, the more mass the product, right? And probably the lower the price point, frankly.
Yeah.
That's why micro and niche creators, if you look at most luxury creators, are not in the millions. But they are the ones Mercedes is running after, or all the top luxury brands are running after today. Because they've understood that that's the audience that's actually
Yeah.
buying that product.
But do you think that somebody who comes from a rich family background has just about 5,000-6,000 followers, will they also be categorized in the influencer category for a brand like Mercedes?
I think it would totally depend. I think definitely there is this category of HNIs, high net worth individuals, who have another circle of other people like them. Now, logically, if that person is talking about their new Rolex or the new car they got, they would probably be the more likely people to influence that circle of affluence. And that circle of 5,000 is probably going to spend more money
Yeah,
than the
exactly.
50 million.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough. That's just how influence works. Now, the thing is that the problem with all words over time is they collect too many shades. This has happened to feminism as a word before. Now it's happened to influencer, which is why all influencers want to be called content creators now.
Yeah.
Because the idea of how can you walk around saying that you are an influencer, who do you think you are, when everybody's an influencer. If I ask you to open your phones today, everybody in this room, and open your Instagram and ask you, do you think you're an influencer? And even if you say, I'm not, if the follower count is more than 0, then you are.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
influencing somebody.
Yeah, that's true.
So everybody's an influencer.
Do you think that high-end brands do not care about the number? When
I
it
think
comes
high-end
to
brands are aware that it's not about not caring about the number, it's caring about the right audience
Yeah.
and the right people. So it might be, and the brands that are doing this well, study it very well. So they'll also understand the demographic, that it may not even be enough that you're a luxury influencer, but are you a luxury influencer that is targeting people who travel to this part of the world? So, for instance, if you're a luxury brand that, focuses on winter wear, it would make no sense for you to focus on an influencer based out of Bombay, for example. Yeah, for sure, people travel and stuff. But I'm saying, just as an example, there's various kinds of influencers and there's various kinds of brands, and I think that the brands that are doing it right are very aware of who the influencers are, and they don't just go for blindly, oh, this person has X amount of following, because they're also putting money behind it. So I think that the good news, the silver lining for people who are doing it right, who are organically growing and not buying followers, even though it's slow and steady does win the race. The cliche is true, because you can buy a huge number of followers, but then over time, it's just going to be obvious that it's not moving the needle for anyone.
Yeah, that's true. But how much money do you think a nano influencer can make today? And who is categorized as a nano influencer? Because that's where you start, right? Your journey of
nano, micro,
influencing.
I think the numbers are different. Everyone, I've seen do so many different charts. I've seen nano under 10,000. I've seen, nano under 1,000. So it totally depends. But I think there's the basic brackets are your nano micro, which I think would probably factor between 10 to 50,000. Then you have your macros, which is probably 150,000 up, and then you have your mega star influencers who go into the millions, and then you have your super diamonds, whatever. But then I think the question,
super diamond?
Huh?
10 million plus.
I don't know. You could do whatever you want to call it. The thing is that it depends so much on who you have collected and what is it that you're trying to sell them. I always try to categorize, and I explain to people as a content creator, and I'm giving examples of Instagram primarily in this case, because that's the hero platform right now, is you are either an entertainer, so you're putting up content yourself, or you're a curator, so you might be finding the best of content and sharing it, or you're a educator, which means you might even be, and right now you see a lot of content of people telling you how to be a good performer on Instagram, because that content performs really well and everyone's looking for that. And then you have to think about, or you're sort of a social commentator, so a pop culture observer who is documenting things like that, which I guess also falls into the entertainment space. So that's where you have to think about, where do you fall, or you're using social media as a hobby, which is perfectly fine, and you have to be none of those. But what the logic of social media says is that people have ample choice, and I think that you max out at, I think you can follow up to 7,500 people at max, even though the brain only has space for 1,500. It's interesting that you can follow all these people, but you will generally follow certain people for the same kind of content. So the advice that people do give you on social media, at least, is pick 2 things that you want to regularly talk about and focus on those, because otherwise you'll confuse everyone, because someone might come, and that's part of the reason when Miss Malini started, we had the main handle and everything was on it, and then we separated Miss Malini beauty, fashion, trending, lifestyle, all of that, so that people who want more fashion don't get bombarded with Bollywood.
For somebody who's like starting from scratch, they are downloading Instagram today, and they wish to create a name for themselves. How can they start? It could be in any industry.
Honestly, the most important thing is to find your uniqueness, your gap. And the way I came about this is that I always thought that you have to be like someone else that's tried and tested and successful to succeed. And so I struggled. There was a big identity crisis that, who am I? I'm not a Bollywood star. I'm not a Kim Kardashian. I didn't study fashion or beauty. So what am I doing here? And then I realized that I'm a social commentator, right? And so, I used to look up to people like Oprah and Ellen DeGeneres and all these different people, Ryan Seacrest even, and say that, I love the idea of being the talk show host or being the person, talking to celebrities. And so I tried to make a space for myself there. And that was the gap, and that's the uniqueness. And that's why it became what it did. And it's still here 15 years later. I've heard that, and Anupam Mittal told me this, that a brand is established when it talks to more than one generation in its lifetime. And I'm proud to say that Miss Malini now is entering its 3rd generation of conversation, because people who started reading my blog when I was writing in my 30s were in their 20s. Now I've had kids, and now, they're in their 2nd, 3rd kid. Some are maybe grandparents, who knows. But I'm just like, it's fascinating to me. I think that for the person who's starting out today, my best advice would be, first of all, don't compare yourself to someone who's been doing this for years. It takes time. I know that we live in the generation of instant everything.
But how much time should you wait till?
See,
you
again,
can't be doing for 10 years, no? Without
not 10
any
years,
results.
but I'm saying that the patience level is so small now that there's so much. I'm telling you why. It comes from instant gratification. I want a date, I swipe. I want food, I call Zomato. I want a ride, I call Uber. Everything is instant. So you're saying wait 10 years, they're not even willing to wait 10 days. That's the problem. Is
Well,
that
how much should they wait, ideally?
honestly, there's no set time. I can't say that in 6 months give up, but I'll tell you
Did
what
you have
I
a
did.
timeline for
I did.
yourself?
I gave myself a year. I said I give myself 1 year for this to go somewhere when I quit all my other jobs. And if it didn't start sustaining me, then I would have to do this on the side and look for something full time. And this is my advice to everyone. The reason why I was able to build what I was able to build, and I didn't know it at the time, is I had a full time job because this did not pay the bills. If you start a social media account wanting to be a creator, expecting it to pay the bills from day one, first of all, that'll never happen, or you're going to end up compromising on your quality or your content or what you even want to write about. I say two things. For one, the kids who want to drop out of school to do this for a living, don't drop out of school, not from a mummy lecture perspective, but one, that's where you're going to make your first network. The most likely people to follow you and be part of that network and community
Yeah,
are
your
your
school,
peer group in
college
school.
friends.
So I'm not even saying it from an academic point of view. I'm saying it from a networking point of view. And the second thing is have a day job so that you don't have to do anything just for the money. That's when you will become a content creator of some note. So my advice is you don't have to wait at all if you have a job that pays the bills, whatever job it is. I used to work all day. I used to have a radio job. I used to work at Channel V. I used to write my blog from midnight till 4 a.m. That's how I did it for 2 years before I
When did you
decided to
sleep?
jump in. I mean, sleep one day.
Just one day. Sunday को पूरा सो के खत्म कर लो.
Yeah. But I think, see, it's able to do, right? For the amount of hours you're doom scrolling on your phone, you could do so many. There's so many work from home jobs. There's so many opportunities now. I don't think there's any dearth. There was my generation or my parents' generation. There was very limited opportunities where you could get, and you had to have a 9 to 5 job. Now there's a ton of different opportunities, and if you're so interested in social media, you could probably even get paid to help someone run theirs. Just to pay the basic bills. And so many people who are creators who are living at home don't have huge expenses anyway. The big mistake is to say, okay, I've decided to become a content creator. This is going to be my life. It's just like the same thing, right? You can't just show up in Bombay and join Bollywood. There are people who've had to do everything from waiting tables to whatever other kinds of jobs they had to do. I think it's a mistake, and it's the lazy way to say that this is what I want to do and I want the world to hand it to me. Because also I feel that if it's handed to you on a platter, you won't appreciate it. Like without the bitter, the sweet isn't as sweet as well.
Yeah, but it's very subjective that how much should you earn before you make content creation your full-time journey. How was it for you? कि
I
आपने
think you have to be able to support yourself, right? So I'm saying a full-time the good thing is, with content creators, if you do well at your work, you get a lot of perks. So you save a lot of money, whether it's free meals or free trips or free clothes, whatever it might be. But you have to do the math. That's why you shouldn't give up school, so you can do that budget for yourself, right? Of how much money do I need every month to survive? And then do the math backwards and you'll have your answer.
Yeah, but how much was it for you?
So this is a very different time. So this was in 2008 when I moved here. I think I quit my job fully in 2010 or 11. So I guess it would have been my rent, which was like 30 or 40,000 rupees per month, and then
It
whatever
was
meals.
that much at that time?
Yeah, it still was. Rent in Bombay has never been cheap. That's
my
for sure.
God.
I mean, when I first moved to Bombay, I used to make, I think, my first job, I think, was 7,000 rupees, and my rent was 5,000 in a PG. So I used to
You
have...
stayed with some 6 girls, I read?
Yes, I did.
Tell us more about that.
That was when I first moved with like literally 2 suitcases and a dream. And I lived in somewhere near Andheri. And my rent there was 600 rupees. So just imagine, it was shared rent between 6 girls. We
my
each paid 600
God.
rupees. And there was this pigeon that used to fly into the house at night. And I wish it sounded like as romantic as Bollywood movies with their pigeons, but it was not. Because this pigeon would enter and fly around, and I was so scared that it's going to hit the fan and there's going to be blood. I was just sleep with a sheet over my head. It was very traumatic.
God.
And I never thought I'd tell the story so much. It's even in my book, but that's how it began. And then slowly, I remember I used to live in a bungalow next to this ironically named club called Rain, because it used to rain inside my bungalow in the monsoon.
What?
I used to have buckets everywhere. Then we came up with this ingenious idea to put a plastic tarp on top of the terrace so that it wouldn't rain in my room. And I remember that was a 4,000 rupee rent.
How did you shift from 600 to 4,000?
I just couldn't
Where
live
were
with
you
that
making
damn
money
pigeon
from?
anymore. So then I started doing odd jobs. I used to do a lot of like little emceeing, little things, like even in Delhi I used to do standing next to the car at Pragati Maidan for 8 hours, wearing a Honda outfit and the choker, giving people pamphlets. I've done it all. I've literally done it all.
Wow. You've like literally come from scratch.
Come from scratch, absolutely.
But so that's how you moved into the 4,000 wala apartment.
Yeah,
Your
so that
story
was
is
a
very
basic-
interesting. So I'm wanting
Yeah,
to know
sure.
like each
No,
step
so when
of it.
when I moved to Bombay, I
Yeah.
didn't have a job, but I had 40,000 rupees that I'd saved from dancing because I used to get 2,000 rupees per show. And I thought I'm coming with 40,000 rupees. It's so much money.
Yeah,
But
I
it doesn't
mean-
last you very long in Bombay. So it lasted me a couple of months of rent. And then the 4,000 rupee apartment, I had like a basic job. I used to work at a company called Activate Technologies that used to help set up websites for people, portals, when we used to call them city portals.
Huh.
And
This
I-
was after you completed your grad.
Yeah, after graduation. Just after.
But you came to Bombay before grad.
No, after grad.
After grad.
After graduation, yeah.
So
But-
तभी आपने क्यों नहीं लिया कोई job?
so I did. When I was in Delhi, I was a professional dancer. So I
Huh.
used to get paid for that. And I used to work for a company called Usha Telenet where I used to write little tidbits about the city. So I was always in this .com-y space
Oh.
before anybody really knew what to do with it.
Huh.
And then when I came to Bombay, I joined that company that ended up setting up the website for Midday called chalomumbai.com.
Okay.
But ironically, when I first came to Bombay, I wanted to be a VJ. So I had gone to audition at
Where?
MTV.
MTV, okay.
And I remember they very sweetly spent, and didn't know anything, so I'd gone with 5 Kodak prints, spent 5 sweet, kind minutes with me and sent me off my way. But ironically, years later, I ended up joining MTVindia.com. But so basically, after the Activate Technologies, it was a company that set up the website for Midday. And I had written the Bible for it, which was what should all the different sections in this website have, what should the subsections be. And then I left that job and I joined a company called Ideas for You, because from then my salary went from 7 to 10 to 15 and to 18 they were paying me. And my job at Ideas for You was to write fake reviews for Ideas for You.
Fake reviews?
Yeah, so I would have
On
to go to
what?
Vijay Sales every day and look up all the different washing machines and then look at their key points and then go back and write reviews under different names for Ideas for You. Ideas, the number 4, you.com. And that was the job.
Did
And
you
I used to
like?
hate doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it was so boring. And I used to just like the colorful washing machines. I didn't know anything about I still don't know how to use a washing machine. So I remember doing all of these odd jobs, but just to pay the bills and be able to stay in Bombay.
Yeah.
And then while I was doing that, somebody told me there's a company called Asia Content that's hiring writers. And I've always been a good writer. So I went there, and then I still remember my boss, now later boss, Anil, said, I'll be honest with you, we're looking for someone to run the romance channel for MTVindia.com. But you have very big shoes to fill because the lady who was running it before that was very good. Ironically, it was this girl who's like just my twin. Her name is Janicia, and we got along very well. So I joined there, and my job then, I was getting 20,000 rupees, and I used to write all the content for the MTV India website. My business card said channel head romance and sexuality. My mother was like traumatized. What am I doing in Bombay? And while I was working there, one lunch break, someone told me, private radio has started. Do you want to audition? So I went on my lunch break and I auditioned for Win
Why
94.6.
you were not enjoying MTV mein
I
content?
was, but I thought, let me say, I've never had a problem doing multiple jobs. So I said, let me try, let's see what happens. And I got the job. So I used to work all day at MTV from 9 to 5. And then I would go home. And then from 9 to midnight, I would go to the radio station and do a night shift show. So I always had multiple jobs. And I was completely fine with that. And that way I was able to.
How much was the radio one paying you?
The radio one, I think, was paying me 20 or 22,000 rupees a month.
Huh.
So then, as a result, I had,
Yeah,
2
40,
incomes.
50.
Yeah, so it was pretty decent, and I was able to pay my rent. And by then, my rent was 20,000. So
Oh.
it was all pieced together somehow. Yeah.
From 600 you started
Yeah,
and you went up to 20,000.
yeah. And that's the thing. That's why I always tell people, it's that I don't think for me it was ever, I've never said that, I can't do it, or I'm going to give up on it, or how will I manage? I think that's one thing that we all have. We have jugaad and the belief. And it just never crossed my mind that I'm just not going to be able to do it, or I'll
Yeah.
go back. Something would just come along. And I think part of that is saying, okay, instead of spending my lunch break faffing with my friends, I'll go for that audition.
Yeah.
Or instead of going home and chilling or hanging with my friends, I'll go do a second job. So part of it is that. Like, part of it is destiny. Part of it is you getting your ass up and
Yeah,
doing something.
of course. Yeah. But, you said that you were doing radio jockey. But आजकल तो रेडियो बहुत ही कम लोग सुन रहे हैं because there's so much of content to consume. So what do you think जिसको अभी career बनाना है रेडियो में, like what's the career path for them like?
I don't know honestly anymore. I've just been so out of touch with it. I did it for 9
You're
years.
now
and
out of touch fully.
I loved it so much. I think that there is still listenerships, but again, everything is subjective. But if you see now, a lot of radio jockeys are doing podcasts. So if you have that skill set, you can probably make that leap. So I think that, there's no skill that's unwanted or useless as such. Even writers now, if you see, there's a lot of writing that goes on online. So there's no skill that's useless or wasted. I think that you have to just tweak it a bit to figure out what is your audience today.
Yeah, I mean, the skill set will have to be tweaked because
But I
people
mean,
are
there's
not
still,
listening
having
to
said that,
radios.
there are people listening. Maybe we don't think they're listening, but there are people
Are
still
you
on their
listening?
commute. On and off, I do. If I'm in a cab or a car, I do listen.
Or would you put your Bluetooth and listen to your
No,
music?
I don't do that. I mean, I'm still one of those, I think the only big change that's happened is I've stopped watching television. Now I only watched OTT. But I think there is still a listenership. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's still there, yeah.
And like, how much do you make as a radio jockey?
When I was a radio jockey, the salaries varied. I think I started at 40,000 and then eventually it
That's
went up
a
to...
lot.
Yeah, then it went up to 1.5 lakhs at one point. But that was when I
Wow.
was doing the evening drive
And this
show.
was in which year?
I'm going to say 2007 or 8.
अभी तो फिर बहुत ही बढ़ गया होगा.
Yeah, it must be. It also depends because the highest paid are the morning show jocks.
हाँ.
And then after that, the evening drive. And then after that, every segment has a different.
Oh, yeah, of course. Morning में the listenership is more so.
Yeah, morning and evening drive because it's usually the commute to
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
and
yeah. Interesting. And then, so after, when you were doing your radio jockey, that's when you got introduced to blogging through your
Yeah.
friend who told you to start.
Yeah, because I was at the radio
Huh.
and I used to start, I used to just, cover stuff on my radio show. In the evening, I talk about the parties I went to. And so I also wrote that as a column.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started. And then when I was doing the column, I started the blog. So while I was doing the radio show, I was doing the column. And even though I had left MTV and I was still doing radio, then I joined Channel V as their digital content head, but was still doing radio.
Oh.
So I always had a show. I had different shows. I had Horn OK Please. I had Malini Till Midnight. And then I started something called Pirate Radio, where
You
I remember...
started that?
Yeah. So it was this thing where, funnily enough, it happened because of Twitter. There's an RJ called Mihir Joshi
Huh.
who once tagged Imran Khan saying, if you like English music, certain kind of, you would love Malini's show at midnight. And he tagged us both on Twitter years ago,
Huh.
like 2009 or 10 or something. And I said, I would love to have you come host the show with me, not thinking he's ever going to say yes. It was just one of those random
But he actually
replies I said. So he said, okay, done if you let me call it Pirate Radio. I said, you can call it whatever you want.
Oh.
And he told me why, and he came and he sat, and he was the first person who came to the studio, sat with me for 4 hours.
Imran
My
Khan.
rule was Imran Khan from 9 to midnight, where I said, the rule is you play 50 of your favorite English songs,
Huh.
and we won't talk about Bollywood.
Oh.
We'll talk about the songs. We'll talk about anything else.
That's how you started your
That's
show.
how I started the show was always on, but that's how I started this whole thing into Bollywood blogging, because while they were in the studio, and these videos are still on my Facebook, I used to take that little flip camera and record them and put it up on my YouTube. This is like many, many years ago. So all these little things, I mean, I didn't even know how it was done. So I used to, in my old PG, I used to put the curtain behind me. I used to put the midday on that side. And I would put my little camera and I would read the headlines of Bollywood news and put it up on YouTube as, what's happening in Bollywood this week.
Oh.
And these videos are still there from 15 years ago. So
Wow.
all of this was called trial and error. Now it's much more, over the years, become a very finessed art.
Yeah, because looking at all of this glitz and glamour, everybody thinks कि start करना है तो ऐसे ही करना है.
Yeah.
They don't see all these.
Yeah, and I think that now it's
struggles.
also going back to more of a raw thing. People prefer raw content. They prefer seeing people as they are. So I think that people are realizing that if you see a lot of the characters that people love are the ones who feel very natural and relatable.
Yeah, but you said कि Imran Khan से your journey in Bollywood started.
Yeah.
उसके बाद, how did
So
you
then-
get to the bigger celebrities?
So then I started, and I used social media. I remember on Facebook, I messaged Farhan Akhtar and I said, would you like to be a guest on my show? And he replied. Now, this is a time when Facebook and all of this was quite new. So
You had
now,
a good following on Facebook?
No, not really. But that's the point. All the platforms were so new at the time that people would reply,
Okay.
So then I had Imran Khan, I had Rahul Khanna, I had, different people, Rahul Bose. So as a result, people started coming into the studio and that's how it all began. And I think it all sort of took off from there.
So Farhan Akhtar was your second guest?
I think he was the second guest. Then there was Rahul Khanna. I'll have to go back and see. There was a whole bunch of them.
You're like literally forgotten that so much happened in your life.
So
You're like-
much has happened. It's 15 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, but who was like the biggest celebrity interview that you had?
not on the radio, but I mean, I've interviewed everyone from Amitabh Bachchan to Shah Rukh Khan to everyone. The only one left on my list is Amir Khan.
Really?
Who I've not had a
क्यों
sit-down
अभी तक
interview.
क्यों नहीं हुआ उसके साथ?
Just timing-wise, and he's also very, like, he only comes out once in a while for things. He does few things far between. My team has interviewed them. I probably was missing that day.
Okay.
But it'll happen one day, I'm sure.
Yeah, if your team has done it already, then I think it's more successful for you that you've left it to your team now.
Yeah.
That they can do it without you also.
Yes.
I've also heard your story with Shah Rukh Khan that when you went to meet him for the first time, you had to wait for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. That's like very interesting.
So that was many years ago, and that was my first interview with him. I think he was doing Happy New Year promotions. And it was Independence Day, and it was at his Red Chili's office. And the next day, they were all going off on a dance tour. So I didn't know how long he's gonna, be around, and the whole thing got very delayed. So my slot was 7:30. It came at 4 in the morning, and I'd taken my whole team, and we were doing my TV show then called Miss Malini's World, and I'd taken my husband along because I had a fun idea that I'm gonna ask Shah Rukh to show him how to do the Raj air hug. And then everyone was like getting fried, like we should leave. I said, I'm not leaving. Even if I stay with one camera, I'm not.
It was at 7:30 in the evening.
It was supposed to be 7:30 in the evening. Our turn came at 4:30 in the morning.
Why?
8 hours later, just because there were so many interviews back to back. They had stopped for dinner. So things are always, and he's notoriously known for being late. But he's so charismatic that when he walked in the room, immediately everybody forgot. And he was so charming. And I had gone with cupcakes, and we all made them play games together. So we had, and that whole cast of Happy New Year was there. So I made them act out. So you have Shah Rukh Khan acting out Bluff Master for Abhishek Bachchan. So it was all very cute. So I think we were playing the kind of internet version of games that people do now back then already, which was really like fun and easy because people want to see the celebrities the way they are as opposed to just, in a gossipy fashion. So I think that's something that we sort of stuck with throughout.
But how was the aura of Shah Rukh Khan? Do you think celebrities have a different aura when they come?
I think so. He absolutely has a very charismatic aura. I think I think the reason he's so successful is just the way he fills a room with personality, and he makes everyone feel special. And I think that's something really special about someone like him and people like him who do that. So he definitely has a lot. He has literally what you call star power.
Yeah, he's said this many times that he's the last of stars. Like, what stardom is really. But who do you think can be a star like him from this generation of actors? Because, after him, nobody has had the name that he has. And before him, Amitabh Bachchan, of course.
I feel like people, I think Ranveer Singh does a great job. He's very charismatic. I think Ranbir Kapoor has that aura. I think in the new generation, we'll have to wait and see. But I think it also takes time to build that star power.
Yeah, but what do you think about Kartik Aaryan? He's had a massive fan following ever since.
I think they're all, the thing is, I've seen all of these people grow up. So I adore them all. Varun Dhawan, Kartik, Siddharth, all of them are super adorable. But like you said, that old school star power also maybe comes from not having so much access to them, which there was a little more mystery, which isn't there anymore. So it might be that.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Because, and why do you think that in South, actors are worshipped like father figures? People are crazy behind them. But in Bollywood, we don't see that kind of craziness.
I don't know. That's a good question. And it takes me back to the Rajinikanth story. I don't know. Maybe it's just from, I think it's lovely because it comes from a great place of respect. I don't think they would ever tear down their celebrities the way that it happens in, Bollywood. But I don't know the answer, to be honest. I'd love to know.
Yeah, because it's something which we don't even see in Hollywood. The kind of worshipping that happens.
Yeah.
But do you think that you spoke about tearing apart through internet trolls and all? So do you think that the industry is unforgiving for even the greatest of the great actors when they don't perform well in a movie?
The thing is, I think that the news cycle is much faster now. So you could be unforgiving and get torn down, but tomorrow you will be old news. It's almost like that feeling of the newspaper is gone and crumpled and now yesterday's news. I have seen people trolled incessantly for a long time and had a huge impact on their mental health as well. But I don't think it's everlasting. I think the new thing comes along and people move along. I just feel that people are much more easily triggered online and like I said, don't worry about what they're saying because they're not saying it to somebody's face.
Yeah, but you spoke of mental health, which is like the biggest health disease in in an industry like Bollywood. So why do you think people get so unstable in their minds whenever something happens, unlike in any other industry?
I mean, I'm not no expert, but I think that I think that it's not that people don't get unstable in other industries. I think that because by virtue of them being in the public eye and their whole life documented, you see much more of it. You might have this in all other industries too, but you don't care so much about their stories or you don't know them to witness it. So I think it's just everything is heightened and amplified and so much
Yeah.
more documented when it comes to entertainment than anything else is. I don't think that it is less or more in any other industry.
Yeah, but how do you, as a platform to deliver content and serve to so many readers, work on these issues? For example, taking Sushant Singh Rajput's case
Yeah.
into consideration, it was being spoken about everywhere in different forms and shapes. How did your platform address it?
So we decided that we are not going to, the same thing, the same rule we applied with previous gossip is we didn't want to speculate and we didn't want to make this clickbaity. So I think we only covered the facts as and when they were released by, authorities, if there's anything specific. And we didn't get into any, there was a lot of trial by media that was done across the board, which was really unfortunate, especially with Rhea. So I think that was super unfair. What we did, I wrote a piece on why we mourn the loss of strangers, which was sort of an insightful piece on why so many people felt so heartbroken and personally affected by his passing, even though they weren't related to him. And that was because there is an affinity to a celebrity that you create a relationship that may not, be a real one, but it's very real. It's an emotional bond. That's why you love them. So
Yeah.
I kind of tried to approach it again with the same premise. And I'm glad we did that because you can't use your platforms so irresponsibly to just say anything without realizing the long-term impacts it can have on people.
Yeah, exactly. But talking on that, have you ever gotten any legal notice over anything that you've reported, especially in your early days when you didn't know the
Honestly,
basics?
no. I think that we learned our lesson pretty early on, and I'm very grateful that neither Rajnikant nor any one of those ever decided to send me a legal notice. I don't think he really, noticed or cared, and I think he's a pretty secure guy, so it didn't bother him maybe.
Yeah.
I think that, I've had enough face-to-face conversations with people that, gave me that insight, and it's all in my book, so please read it
Of
for those
course.
insights. But I think that, yeah, so I think for us, I mean, legal notices are the powerful cause for internet sites where, if there's a picture or something, but those are all handled professionally where you can take it down or you give credit. But we've always been pretty good about, following those rules.
Yeah, every publication has this line कि सूत्र के हिसाब से.
Yeah.
तो ये सूत्र होते कौन है? आज आप बता ही
Yeah.
दो.
No, so there's a mix, right? So we don't do blind items. I know there's a lot of blind items where you can say
Yeah.
anything and say someone said.
Haan.
But technically, those sutra khabris are usually people who are anonymous sources within the inner circle of a celebrity, and that's quite common.
Oh, but is it like really ethical that
It's not, of
the
course, it's
inner
not.
circle gives you the information?
Of course,
and-
it's not ethical, but that's not. I'm not saying it's ethical, but I'm just saying that that's how gossip generally is spread, whether it's staff or somebody who has an agenda. And this is not just in Bollywood. This is in Hollywood. This is in across all industries.
Yeah. But you're not responsible for that. You're like, okay, it's just a piece of our information.
No,
we'll
so we don't
report
do
it.
that. So I was saying, like I said, we don't
Huh.
do blind items and we don't say according to,
Huh.
you
You
somebody
verify
close to-
it.
We verify it and we ask people to go on the record.
Okay. Otherwise, you just write spotted if you are not sure of anything.
No, but we don't. That's what I'm saying. We don't do that kind of content. So
Yeah.
I think you'll have to ask someone who does that kind of content how they
Yeah.
do it.
I don't think so people do that anymore,
Yeah.
thankfully. But what's your take on the pap culture? How's it evolved? Because आपने जब शुरू किया था ये सब बिल्कुल था ही नहीं. And now pages like Viral Bhayani and Mana
Yeah.
Manglani are now super
I mean, I
hits.
think it's very enterprising. People like Viral, Manav, so they used to supply pictures and then
Yeah.
they realized they themselves have platforms, which is a great evolution. There's a great documentary Al Jazeera has done on the pap culture and how difficult it is to be paparazzi and how they have to really struggle to get a particular picture. And it's the same thing, right? Like we can blame the paps all we want, but there is an audience that's consuming those pictures. So like I have a rule, we don't do funeral spotting. We don't take pictures of people attending a celebrity funeral. But you see a lot of that. And that's not the paparazzi's fault. It's the consumer's fault that they want to see it. So I think that's also something that we have to maybe turn the lens on ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually, it's very nice that you've set boundaries
Yeah.
for your platform. कि ऐसा नहीं कि जो भी content बिक रहा है सभी दिखा दो.
Yeah.
There
But I
needs to
think
be a
there's an
line
audience
somewhere.
for everything, and if they want that, people can go elsewhere. But I'm glad that there is an audience for happy, shiny, fun content, and
Yeah.
still 15 years later, we're able to do it.
Do you cover theatre artists also in your blogs?
On and off, so we've done a lot of stuff with Lilette Dubé. She had just done a play recently.
Huh.
So yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Why not more? Because there is very less consumers for it.
No, as in, I mean, I honestly like, I mean, our focus is Bollywood, fashion, lifestyle. So we've kind of stuck to our categories. But as in, when I find something interesting, then I do definitely cover it,
Yeah.
but probably not as a specific vertical.
And who would you envision your contemporaries as in this world of blogging and entertainment fashion reporting?
So, I mean, now it's quite divided, right? Because there's a lot of individual influencers, but we're also a media, conglomerate. So I don't know if there's anyone that's exactly a contemporary as such. Also, I mean, I guess I'm just a lot more ancient, so it's been 15 years since I've been doing it. So I think that it's great to see that there's so many people who are specifically focused on fashion, lifestyle. I think Bollywood still, I think there's the bigger players. I don't think anyone is a real big, Bollywood equivalent of Miss Malini in that sense. When you have your Pink Villa, Hangama, everyone does a great job,
Yeah.
Bollywood Life. So there's a lot of them, and I believe a lot more in collaboration over competition anyway.
Correct.
So I don't really look at it as,
Yeah, that's why I didn't ask you competitors. I
yeah.
just asked as contemporaries.
Contemporaries, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of them, but I don't think there's any personality-led contemporary in the Bollywood field. That I can know.
Yeah.
I look up to people like Anupama Chopra, Rajiv Masan, but they're also slightly different because they're more traditional media.
Yeah. But what do you think is and was your differentiating factor, especially when this world of content started taking shape and everybody was reporting the kind of news
I think
that
the
you
unique
were?
thing was that, even though we didn't know this idea of content creator, influencer, we were doing it from a personal perspective. One person's opinion. Like Miss Malini, I never walked around saying this is good or bad. I said, I love this, or here's what I saw. And that little anime became that influencer character for me. So I think that was the USP, because most other people reporting on entertainment were the larger media houses or the big magazines. So this was probably the unique voice in that
And do you
space.
think like doing something like Miss Malini Awards will
So we have done
matter?
it. We did a fashion awards. We also did a calendar with Dabu Ratnani, where we featured influencers, because only actors get shot by
Yeah.
Dabu. But we did a whole calendar featuring influencers,
Oh.
which was really fun. So we gonna keep innovating. I'm doing a lot of things in the event space now. So I curate a lot of events where I invite influencers and celebrities to come and create content together. So there's always going to be evolution, and that's kind of what we pride
What
ourselves
was it
on.
called, the fashion awards that you
It
hosted?
was just Miss Malini Fashion Awards, yeah, but it was all done online. This is years ago.
Oh, but have you thought of doing it offline?
We keep doing different sorts of events. I think there's a lot of awards already, so
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do an award, but I'll probably think of doing something different.
Yeah, because like
So, for instance, like I said, the calendar was a version of that, right?
Ah.
The Dabu calendar had 12 great influences in it, so you don't have to call it an award, but they were accoladed in that way.
right. Kusha
fantastic.
Kapila has written a foreword for your book, right?
No,
She's
she's
given
just
a quote.
given a quote, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure you must have tracked her journey also from
Yes.
being just a creator to
It's
a star.
incredible. Her, Prajakta, Kohli,
Yeah,
Dolly
but
Singh.
what does it take to get to that level? Because not all creators are
It just
reaching
takes
there.
talent. It
And
takes
time.
talent and hard work and the willingness to, keep going for auditions, keep trying. I think Mithila Patkar said it best. She goes, I keep going for auditions. It's not like, okay, I did a great show and now I'm going to sit here and let work to come to me. So I don't think there's a particular formula. I think everyone knows at the end of the day, it's like you work hard, you play hard, you believe in yourself, and you don't, take yourself too seriously, but don't expect so many free passes either. You have to do the work.
Yeah, and we'll read your book to get
Yes.
your insights on other
Please,
topics.
there's 2 books: To the Moon, How I Blogged My Way to Bollywood, and the second one is Under the
I
Influence.
love the tagline. Who gave it? You.
What? Which one?
From blogging, how you blogged your way to Bollywood.
Yes,
Who gave this
I
tagline?
did. Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
It
told me
was
you were
pretty much
always good at writing.
as simple as describing exactly what I was doing.
Yeah, exactly. But thanks for
Thank you so
coming,
much.
Malini. Really had a great time.
Me too. Thank you for having me.